Hi, Cinematic Enthuse here. Um, Today is March 14th, and I just wanted to talk to you a little bit today about a Bob Fosse playlist that I made for you guys to watch if you like. And also, I'll include a link to it in the comments if you're on YouTube. If you're not on YouTube, you can always go to my link tree, or I'm not sure if, wherever you're watching this from, Instagram or TikTok or YouTube. My name is Cinematic Enthuse, so same thing for Linktree, www.linktr.ee/cinematic enthuse, and that'll take you to my YouTube and Instagram as well. That's also my handle on YouTube as well. So, hold on here. Today I wanted to talk about a little bit about Bob Fosse, just because I was actually talking with a friend of mine who was showing me a dance of hers, and which was really great. And actually, so she's kind of inspired this um, particular playlist because I said that her dancing reminded me a little bit of Bob Fosse in parts because of the bent elbows. And I realized that a lot of modern dance and hip hop dance uses, and I'm sure he got those moves from somewhere else too, but a lot of modern dance uses that kind of bent, angular, those very angular moves that he did, especially with women. I think he tended to choreograph for women, um, as we usually know in the 70s and late 60s, 70s. That definitely became like the style. Um, so I just wanted to go over just some of the pieces that I chose for, even though I'm talking about the 70s, I actually prefer Fosse from the 50s and 60s a little bit more because I don't know, I like the musicals from that time a little bit better. It's from the classic era, it's from the old Hollywood studio system. I think that the songs are usually better. The maybe the story isn't as interesting, but things aren't as dark. I tend to like musicals that are more entertainment based than, let's say, and usually have very high level of quality in terms of musicianship or dance quality or acting or whatever it is. And I tend to like the more what some people call frothy or whatever. It depends on what you value. If you value being entertained and feeling great and seeing people do wonderful things on stage or in a film that's got colors and images that you can't see anywhere else, that's what you get with the studio system. It's just, I know there was a lot of sacrifice that had to happen to get it to work like that. A lot of people had to work extremely hard and probably overworked. But we have like 30 plus years of films that are like just amazing to watch. Even the bad ones are pretty good. I mean, there's some that are hard to get through. But anyway, that's just about Hollywood in general. Um, about 4 or 5 years ago, I got fascinated by this time period in Bob Fosse's life in the 50s and the early 60s, but mostly the 50s, where he was under contract with MGM. Because when I was growing up in the 70s, all I heard about was, all that jazz film that he did that's autobiographical. Obviously I heard about Cabaret and, all the choreography he did for all those shows on Broadway and I'm missing a couple of big ones. Chicago, of course. I heard about all these things and I saw clips and everything. So I figured, okay, well, that's Bob Fosse in a nutshell. That's everything. And I liked it a lot. I mean, sure. But like I said, the music is different in the 50s, especially in the musical Hollywood system. So when I found out, because honestly, I didn't know he was under contract until 4 or 5 years ago. I started watching old movies again. I go through periods of my life where I don't watch old movies for a while, and then I watch them for a long time, and then I stop, and then I always come back. So anyway, I was like blown away by these 3 or 4 films that he did in the 50s under contract with MGM. Give a Girl a Break was one of them with, and originally I saw it. I didn't even know Bob Fosse was in it when I watched it. I was interested in Stanley Donen directing because I love Stanley Donen. And those of you who know musicals, you know Stanley Donen. Um, and so I really watched it for his direction. And I like Debbie Reynolds, she's extremely talented. So I thought, well, I'll watch this. And I was like, wait a minute, who is that guy? And I'm like, that's Bob Fosse? Oh my God. Because I had never seen these films before, and I didn't see him as a young man. I didn't see him, they just weren't available when I was younger. So, so I just realized, I was like, oh my God, I want to see more of these, right? So I saw Give a Girl a Break, and then I think there was another one, Kiss Me Kate, the film. I had not seen that one, even though that one was more readily available. He's got a smaller part in that, but a really amazing dance scene in that that just completely stands out. And the same thing with Give a Girl a Break. All of his dance scenes are just wow. And then the other one is, which I think a lot of people who were on Twitter used to retweet this clip of from My Sister Eileen, which is actually a remake of My Sister Eileen, I think, from the 1940s with Rosalind Russell. Only this version that he's in, Bob Fosse is in, it has, I believe it has Janet Leigh in it, and as the main character, as the sister. I can't remember who plays the other sister. And then Jack Lemmon is also in it. And it's a good movie. But there's a dance scene in it that a lot of people know about with him and Tommy Rawl, that I included as well. And then some of the other dance numbers, the playlist kind of turned into I think I ended up calling it Fosse, Niles, Verdon, Haney, Reynolds, because that includes Marianne Niles, who was a very important influence on him in the beginning of his career, and I think they got married, but she was, and you'll see her in this clip, she was extremely influential on him. And then of course everybody knows about Gwen Verdon being really amazingly influential on him, and you'll see her in many clips. And then Carol Haney, you'll see her in, he also danced with her a lot, and you'll see her in a piece, I Love a Piano, which is a nice vaudeville kind of song. And then Debbie Reynolds, of course, is in Give a Girl a Break, which is the Stanley Donen picture. And so it's kind of like a little bit of a tribute to the important women in his life too, because he did so much dancing with women as partners, that I think that it was really important to. And then of course I kind of figured that, but then when I did read a little bit about him, and when I realized, I figured that Gwen Verdon was a huge influence on him, and but I didn't know about these other people like Marianne Niles, and there's another woman, I can't remember her name. Well, of course, Anne Reinking is a huge influence as well. Sorry I didn't include her in this because she's a little more 70s period. But I do love her. She's a wonderful dancer. Really wonderful dancer. So I felt like it was like, it's a Bob Fosse and the women that kind of shaped him and made him, who he was. So definitely in line with Women's History Month, just as important as his stuff, because he did so much choreography for women. I think he's a lot like Similar, because I'm going to mention Prince, because Prince is a good example of a similar example of, he was a great musician in his own right, but he wrote really well for women. Same thing with Bob Fosse. Great musician, a great dancer in his own right, great choreographer in his own right, great director in his own right. But I think he also wrote and choreographed for women really well. And I think he understood female dancing really well from what I've seen. Okay, so I hope you like that playlist. I think it's really fun. It's not too long. I think it's less than 45 minutes. It might even be 40 minutes or less. It's just short little tiny clips, and I think you'll like it. I've been enjoying it. There's some amazing stuff in there. I mean, you will see flips, you will see acrobatics, you will see amazing angular dances, you'll see ballet, you'll see tap. I mean, he does ballet, he does tap, he does, what became his signature style. He does that kind of cabaret style. He does the mambo. I mean, he could just do anything. So, and he had a lot to live up to because he had Fred Astaire and Gene Kelly to live up to. But well played. I mean, he's just like the successor to, their thrones, if you will. Okay, so the other movie, that's really more of a playlist, but the movie I wanted to talk about that I like, when I think of screwball comedy, I always like to think of this movie, and I just thought I'd bring it up because I wanted to rewatch it again. It's called It's Love I'm After, and it's a lesser known film, and the reason why I wanted to definitely share it with you guys today, and I will include the link to Internet Archive, which means you won't have to worry about, it's basically the equivalent of YouTube, only, it's the public domain. Somebody's uploaded it to that for now. So watch it while you can, because this one is kind of harder to find. It's an Archie Mayo film, 1937, Olivia de Havilland, Leslie Howard, Betty Davis, Eric Bolloré, and I can't remember, the other guy's name is Patrick Knowles. Oh, and not to be missed is Spring Byington. Her name is really hard to say. First name is Spring, last name is Byington. And Benita Granville is the little teenager in it. She's really fun. And I always forget the father's name. I think his name is William West, and he's really funny in it too. So like I said about Bringing Up Baby, a lot of these screwball comedies that I like have the main characters, but then they also have these supporting characters that are really funny. And it's almost like the main characters carry the film, but you wait for those scenes with those supporting characters. They're so good. And they usually have older actors, older than the main people. They usually tend to be, aunts and uncles or cousins or parents or in-laws or whatever, or neighbors or whatever. But those people always, I just wait for the scenes. And that's the case with this film as well. You'll love even the first line in the film is said by Spring Byington. I can't say her name. In the upper balcony of the theater. So the first thing you hear is from a supporting character, I believe, that isn't in the play. Spoiler alert, the first opening act is wonderful. I love it, especially if you're a fan of Shakespeare and you're a fan of comedy and you're a fan of making fun of something that you actually like and admire. You'll love the first scene, because I totally respect Shakespeare and I love Shakespeare. And I also love when people like Leslie Howard, who also in real life was an acclaimed Shakespearean actor, theater actor before he joined Hollywood. And Betty Davis, of course, was a theater actor as well. And they're both playing Romeo and Juliet on stage in the opening scene. Only underneath their breath, they're muttering to each other, like they're basically bickering at each other while this death scene is happening, which everybody knows Romeo and Juliet, basically, uh, where, each of them, one of them takes actual poison and the other one takes a poison that wakes them up later. I think it's Juliet who takes it. So anyway, when each of them is taking their poison and the other one is leaning over the other one, saying goodbye or whatever, saying these terms of endearment, in the middle of that, they're having this argument with each other because they're real life lovers, and they're talking about each other's breath. And the funniest thing I thought was when Leslie Howard is kind of, he's fallen back because he's just taken poison, and she's in front of him on stage, and he keeps telling her, "You're blocking my face. You're blocking my face," because of course she's blocking him, people from seeing him on stage, and he's supposed to be dying. So I thought that was hilarious, and that's just right off the bat. So if you like theater, and I'm one of these people, if you don't mind me ranting about this, but one of my pet peeves about people who supposedly like classic film is they tend to be the kinds of people who only like certain kinds of film that are similar to modern day film, or film that's been made in the last 50 years. And I'm of both camps. I like almost all kinds of film. I mean, there's some films that I stay away from, but genre-wise. But, I really love classic film in that it could take something like theater, which, some people call it stagey. Like, that's a pet peeve of mine. I really hate it when people call a movie stagey. If you didn't have the stage, you wouldn't have theater. Like all of these amazing actors that came from the theater. Now, I'm not saying it always works, because it doesn't. But one of the things that I love about theater actors who come to film is they know how to use their face, they know how to use their voice, they know how to use their body, and they just bring a whole level of excellence that you just can't get with like somebody who just maybe was a model and did some acting on the side, and they look really good or something, and maybe they've got some talent, but you can just tell a difference between those theater actors, especially the ones that came out in the 30s, because there wasn't any work. Broadway was drying up financially, or at least for a bit of time, because of the Depression. And so we're really lucky to have that. So you'll hear me complain a little bit about modern people's take on, especially on comedy. People are very tough on comedy, and they're not nearly as tough on comedy. They're not nearly as tough on other genres as they are in comedy. Now, I get it. If you don't like a certain style, then don't watch it. But I'm telling you that if you like this style, and I'm guessing you do because you're watching my channel, this is a good one. And I won't give too many other spoilers away, but there's some really great scenes with Leslie Howard and Eric Bleret. So he's basically the manservant to Leslie Howard, but they have a nice kind of equal relationship, with the exception of, Eric Bleret has to, do these manservant-y things like take care of him and pack his clothes and all that. And that's kind of a funny bit, to be honest. But they also kind of have a nice camaraderie that seems more equal, which is really cool. He asks Eric Bleret, his character's name is Diggs, kind of like, sounds like Jeeves. It's kind of like a Jeeves and Wooster kind of relationship, where you really feel like the actual person, the aristocrat, really values the servant's input, and he asks, like, "What do you think, Jeeves?" In this case, it's Diggs. "What do you think, Diggs? What should we do?" And Diggs says, "Well, I think we should do this, that, and the other." And so it's kind of nice to see that, but they're also two Brits, and so they're both very funny, and they're both also very funny. So, and of course, Betty Davis, you know, one of these rare comedy performances that I really like of hers. She's got a couple others that there's the famous one, All About Eve, which is more of a uh, definitely that's a very dark comedy. But in the 30s, she did a couple. She did about, well, in the 30s and 40s, I know she did at least four. She might have done a couple more, but she did Jimmy the Gent, which is kind of a comedy with Jimmy Cagney. She did this one, It's Love I'm After, which I think she excels with Leslie Howard. I think they're quite good together. Um, and then she did the ones that are a little more famous, I think, is especially The Man Who Came to Dinner. I think that's more famous. That's in the 40s. And then the other 1941 I think she did was The Bride Came COD, which I may talk about later on. And that's with Jimmy Cagney again. She could have done a whole slew of Jimmy Cagney, just like I talked about Joan Blondell last time. I would have loved to have seen a whole block of 10 films with Joan Blondell and Jimmy Cagney where they just do all sorts of crazy antics together in a comedy, you know? Maybe not 10, but maybe 4 or 5 of Jimmy Cagney and Betty Davis doing just crazy comedy stuff. I think that would have been really fun. Um, so yeah, so It's Love I'm After. Definitely Olivia de Havilland is very young and she's very dynamic in this movie. She really holds the film together really well. You can tell she was going to be a big star. And I don't know of a lot of other comedies she did. She might have done one or two more, I think, because that was a time period where there was a lot of comedy happening. So, but I don't think she did a whole lot of them after that. Not 100% about that. But she's quite good. Um, Again, Spring Byington has a wonderful role, and the Benita Granville plays the like kind of a little teenager that's snooping around and spying on everybody and reports to the mother and during dinner, kind of gossiping about what everyone's saying in the house. And the mother says to her, you know, you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't do that. But by the way, what are they saying? You know, so there's this kind of like family dynamic of like mischief, I guess. And there's some really good one-liners in there. Uh, you know, really fun one-liners. And Eric Blaret's just got a couple scenes that you will absolutely love, though, and I won't tell you about them, but just keep your eye out for him because he's just fabulous. In fact, I could do a whole series of like YouTubes just about his movies. He's great. You know, anything he's in, he's hilarious. He's with Fred Astaire in like several musicals. He's just, anytime you see him in anything, he's like him and Everett Horton. Just, you know, it's going to be a good time. So, and maybe I'll get into their films at some point too, separately. I think they did a couple together, but they're just hilarious. So I think that's about it for now. And maybe if you guys, I know this is a longer video today, but if you guys have any suggestions or, and I could always just see if I can make it happen. But if you have any suggestions or requests in terms of either, I haven't done any music videos yet, videos about music, but this Bob Fosse thing is probably the first thing I've done that has music in it, besides Footlight Parade. But I will keep kind of vacillating between screwball comedy, musicals. I might get into other genres too, so don't be surprised. I might even do a more recent thing within the last 50 years. But I do love coming back to the 30s and getting rooted in the 30s, you know? And the 40s. The 40s are still good for comedy too, and for musicals as well. And, you know, pretty much the whole old Hollywood system is a solid foundation. But I might also talk about some music, pop music or rock music, maybe some soul or funk or reggae or something like that. I'm not sure. So that's why I like to leave things open-ended. But if you go to my Instagram, which is also Cinematic Enthuse, I usually will end up posting something and saying, this is what I'll be talking about in the next couple days. So that's a good way to kind of find out what I'm doing. And also, if you have any comments, leave them in the YouTube or in the Instagram, news feed or whatever. Or you can DM me if you want and just say, hey, I really like this 30s or 40s comedy or musical, or I like this person, or just let me know, because that happened with my friend. She started talking about dancing, and I said, oh, that looks like Bob Fosse. And then here we go. Here's the Bob Fosse. So you never know. All right. I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend, and I'll talk to you soon.